Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
Are you a supporter of free speech? 800-8949, 800-8949. Or are you someone who thinks that speech should be curtailed, it should be licensed, there should be permits issued of some kind? Maybe not for everything, but for some things, right? Some things need to be permitted first. They need to pass inspection from a county official, or maybe a special free speech commission. Let's have the county, to avoid people being offended by the speech of others, create a free speech commission, which will have power to authorize or the power to suppress speech that is offensive, speech that hurts people's feelings, speech that makes people wonder if their religious ideas are correct, which makes them doubt their view of God, which makes them ashamed to be a member of the white race, or maybe a dark-skinned race, as those maybe who come here from Pakistan. Why do we have free speech? And is there a benefit in having free speech in Chattanooga? Well, this is David Tulis. That's my name here, David Tulis at Nooga Radio. And I am a free speech advocate. And I'd like to, I don't want to boast, but I think that I may be one of the few free speech people in town. And that is because as a Christian, I'm a classical liberal, okay? And I say that because there are liberals out there who think they're liberals, but they're really they're not very liberal at all. Now, those people who are not liberals in the classical sense are often progressives and Democrats, socialists and fascists. The fascists are perhaps the worst in preventing free speech. They wear their masks, they wear black, and they assault people from speaking. They assault people who are supporters of President Trump. They break up meetings. They forbid college lecture halls from hearing a speaker, a sociologist, let's say, or a scholar, a Muslim scholar from who's converted to a Christian, right? People like that, we simply cannot allow them to speak, and so we shout them down. We throw urine at them. We create an uproar so bad that the authorities come in to break it up, right, to restore peace. Thereby, when peace is restored, preventing the speaker from having his say or her say. Those are the fascists. And fascism is, of course, a political economic theory, and it envisions state control of everything, even though in fascism there's nominal ownership by the family, the leading capital family. The Krupps, for example, in Germany, they nominally owned their ironworks, but those works were brought into the service of the Wehrmacht and the National Socialist Party. And the fascists, like on the left, are like those on the right. They are equally bad. They're both of them progressive. So fascists and socialists are having a family feud, essentially. And that is my analysis of the recent socialist event downtown that a couple Thursdays ago, where the people were complaining about the Charlottesville riots, where some of those in that melee were just brothers with maybe a slightly different skin tone or a slightly different manner of speech. That would be the fascists were there, and of course the socialists were very upset that the fascists were there. And so you have two brethren, each with a high view of the state, a low view of the individual in some respects. And they were having a family feud. And then, of course, in Charlottesville, there were also people who were simply traditionalists who want to defend the statues of Robert E. Lee. These are people who favor the South, who are maybe kind of agrarians in their thinking. They're states' rights people. They are libertarians. They're neo-Confederates. They are old-style Confederates. There are people who are descendant from Confederate warriors and generals and lieutenants and have a stake in the South. They are cultural conservatives, and they are those who defend the monuments, right? Those are the people who defend the monuments, those people who know that the moral tariff was the cause of the war, and who have read Tom DiLorenzo's works and others, Clyde Wilson's works and others, suggesting that, well, slavery was not the cause of the war at all, but just a marketing device by the North used to sell the Northern cause to the Europeans, and finally agreeing that the cause of the war was to free the black man. Well, people in the North back then even very generous-minded people were not for blacks at all. They were as racist as those they say occupied the South. Those who voted in the General Assemblies of the South to secede, racist. Well, the North had many of them. And in fact, blacks were treated better in the South than they were in the North. The free black man in the North had a very bad time of it in the 1840s and 50s. And the black man in the South, though in slavery, he was not in chains, right? That's a myth. There were no chains in the South except at the auction. He worked freely, and the black in the South was better off than the working Caucasian in Europe, in France. He had more meat, he had more calories in his diet, and better living conditions than many free people in France and England in the 1840s and 1850s. Now, to get back on the topic, free speech. Now, I say things like that, and there are people who may be offended, but I hope because it's me saying them, David Tulis, your guru of local economy, your defender of local economy and the free market, will see. You can see that I'm not. I have a better perspective than most people. I'm not a partisan in some of those disputes, and I think that what we need to have is a free market in ideas. That's like saying, well, we are very concerned about free speech being abused, and so we're going to license the sale of ink. We're going to license the sale of ink, and if you buy ink from any licensed dealer, ink is illegal to own. Okay, first of all, we have to make a ban on ink, and only sellers who are approved can sell to approved buyers. Okay, that's how regulation works. And then if you are a printer, let's say of a newspaper like the Chattanooga Time-Free Press, you can buy ink. You're an approved buyer. You can buy from an approved seller, but you can't buy ink from the Samizdat press, right? From the underground press, as was run by dissidents in the Soviet Union, who did everything on mimeograph, right? And pirated copies of paper, pirated ink, and the like, and who paid top dollar on the black market for ink. Well, we don't want there to be permission granted by better people to those who are publishers and speakers, posters of websites, people who make comments, people who make videos on YouTube, and who have the Minority Report. Because in many ways, think about it. I am David Tulis here at Nooganomics Radio, and I offer the Minority Report. I say it's a Minority Report because I want to make it sound controversial, though I really think that you, my listener, will think that what I'm saying is you thought it all along. You thought all the things that I've said yourself. You've actually thought these thoughts. For example, my defense of price gouging, to highlight it in a controversial way, it's really a thought you've already had. You've already had that, and you've resented the idea of price gouging laws. You're sort of torn between the idea of a $45 case of bottled water, and on one hand, and then on the other hand, you think, well, wait a minute. If you control prices, you are creating the state to intervene in the market, and don't we know where that leads? That always leads to bad things. You have kind of a conflict. And so when I give you the analysis, which I will do in just a minute, the analysis of the free market in times of crisis, you will say, of course David's right. He's exactly right. I've always thought that. And so in a way, I'm not offering the Minority Report because I'm just giving voice to your ideas, your thoughts, and your ideas about liberty, about how the marketplace works, how generally it's bad, evil with wicked results to make the state the arbiter of things, right? Whether they be of words or the sale of generators, chainsaws, and pallets of bottled water. Do we want to make the state the arbiter of those things? When FEMA was dealing with prior weather disasters, it turned back thousands of volunteers in those areas. FEMA does not like competition. FEMA is a walking disaster, a walking socialist welfare program with an emergency storm destroyed landscape calling, right? That's what it shows up in those times where mud is everywhere. Mud is in your most intimate thoughts. It's you can't escape the mud from the time of a hurricane or flood. And there FEMA is with its program to repel people coming in to help, to repel churches lined up in rows of pickup trucks and trailers of goods and lumber. Turn them back. We can't have them here. The roads are crowded. Go back. And that's what FEMA will tell you. And who brings relief? Well, Walmart brings relief. The free market brings relief, whether it's affordable water and so on. Well, government programs are almost always bad, and there's a problem with scale and with size. We're seeing that in the breakup of cartels today. Though I was going to mention a moment ago about Hamilton County, and I didn't quite make the point. I didn't quite chop the neck off all the way, and I was trying to guillotine the subject. And that is that the tax increase for Hamilton County is along traditional legacy ideas. Think about why would Hamilton County, in the age of YouTube, since we have PDFs today, why would Hamilton County want to devote at least $100,000 to structural upgrades of the school system? Why do we need a school system and structural upgrades when we have the internet? We have Khan Academy. Is there no way that we can break out of the legacy style of thinking that says we have to maintain this intensely capital structure on the public's dime? We have to tax the public to maintain a system which is based on a false premise on the marketplace, right? The false premise of Hamilton County schools is that knowledge, wisdom, literature, and teaching lectures are expensive. And we have to spend at least $10,000 per student on the taxpayers' dime and engage the leisure class, that is to say the public school teaching staff, and the vast hordes of administrators, and then the people who mow the grass, who fix the plumbing, who tend to the roofs, who write reports over and over again about the leak in room 5A, that kind of thing. And we're doing all that, and we have the internet. How is it that I can download books from numerous authors? You can go to Gutenberg.org, for example, and download almost any book. You can read a book online. You can print it out. You can read Gulliver's Travels online, for example, by Jonathan Swift. I've had occasion to look for that book there so I can do a word search on my hard copy of where certain classic phrases are of ridicule against government in Swift. It's all online. Why do we have to have a system so expensive it operates on the premise that knowledge and wisdom, teaching and training is expensive and rare? It's not. It's free and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in the digital economy. So Mayor Coppinger doesn't realize that we have made technological advances that show how retrograde, how out of date, how inefficient schools are. You have a school when you don't have books, right? When you have a lecturer, the wise man who stands in front of a group of people who want to hear what he has to say. I was a student at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville for 4 years, and I worked one summer at a newspaper there, the Charlottesville Observer. And I remember being in the class of Dr. Graebner, a very famous political science professor, a writer. He was a historian, and he had wonderful lectures. He received a standing ovation in the last day, worthy of his great explanation of American foreign policy. And I got a lot from it. But, I didn't have to be in that class with 250 other freshmen and second-year students or third-year students at University of Virginia. We could have just seen it on a video or read the book. Why do we have to have? We're there in the room because the form matters, right? His presence mattered, though the exams were graded by graduate students and not him. His presence had an aura about it, and so that's why we were all there to hear him. But that's not necessary. That's not necessary. And as you think about it, with the existence of the internet, these things are kind of luxuries. And by some accounts, universities are fading. They're on their way out. They've been replaced by the internet. And over time, I think in the next 10 to 20 years, there will be no need for a certification for an institution, but rather the individual is the party that's certified. So you say, look, I can certify that I've taken these classes online. I've met this group. I've attended those lectures. I've written these reports for that teacher over there, all online perhaps, or maybe in a local setting. I didn't go to a certified school. There's a shift promised by Charles Hugh Smith, a noted writer, that suggests that that's the trend. And again, it's decentralization. That is how centralized cartels such as Hamilton County Public Schools evolve, right? They're not evolving. They're, let's hope, devolving. And as they devolve, that will be better for you, my listener, the taxpayer. 800-8949. That's 800-8949. 888-949. Now, about censorship, Google is playing censor. And I get this from lifesitenews.com, which is a pro-life website that has very good coverage based in Canada. And according to Bloomberg News, we have Bloomberg, by the way, every day at 1 o'clock here on Nooga Radio, 1240 AM, 92.7 FM. Google is, by report, issuing guidelines on hate speech. Potentially controversial and offensive videos may be allowed, will have certain functions disabled. For example, the monetization function. A week before the announcement, YouTube demonetized 900 videos from an evangelist named Michael Brown, and they covering a range of topics. One feature that was blocked was an interview with a former KKK member who's now a pastor of a black church. Okay, even that one was taken down. In May, YouTube removed a video by the Center for Medical Progress, David Tulis, showing an abortion conference, right? A baby killing conference. It then removed a copy of the video LifeSite News had saved and posted, saying it contained inappropriate content. So hearing about baby killers discuss the price of baby parts and how we can arrange to destroy boys and girls to keep the head, right? To keep the cranium intact so we can pull out the eyes at a convenient moment. That is deemed inappropriate. In June, just a couple months ago, it banned a video by LifeSite News that showed, and I think I've seen this at least an image in this video, a girl watching a nearly nude man dance at a gay pride festival. The reason YouTube gave for banning the video that shows the queer movement in a negative light was that it sexualizes minors. So that was why it came down. It sexualized minors. Now, free speech is something that I'm very much for, and the government should not be involved in it. There's a great piece at LouRockwell.com about by James Bovard, pointing out how the government cannot be involved in harassing people with the wrong ideas, right? Nincompoops, nitwits, and other people who have the wrong ideas. Let them go. Let free speech take care of them. In other words, let people hear the back and forth and make their own judgment. When the government goes after, for example, leftists back in the 1960s, remember there was the COINTELPRO program from the FBI. It set up its own Klan member, a 250-member Klan organization. And the goal of that was to attract from the United Klans of America people. This came out in a 1976 report. One federally funded informant admitted that he and other Klansmen had beaten people severely, had boarded buses and kicked people off, and had went in restaurants, quoting him, had went in restaurants and beaten them with a blackjack, chains, and pistols. These are FBI people, okay? Other FBI COINTELPRO operations sought to destroy black activists, including Martin Luther King, who was killed by the government, by the way. He was killed by a combination of important people, the good people. One FBI office boasted of spurring shootings, beatings, and a high degree of unrest in the ghetto area of southeast San Diego. Once the FBI committed to subverting dissident speech, well, guess what happens? Its crackdown became bureaucratic growth industry, Bovard says, that eventually included even women's lib. Now, there's a quote in this essay from Nixon aide Charles Huston, who was testifying in 1975. He said COINTELPRO had a tendency, quote, to move from the kid with a bomb to the kid with a picket sign, and from the kid with a picket sign to the kid with a bumper sticker of the opposing candidate. And you just keep going down the line. And of course, Ruby Ridge is an example of perhaps the best of this sort of miscreancy by the state, the modern state. Randy Weaver had left, in fact, one part of the country, moving from Iowa to near the Canadian border. That move was a part of a plot to provoke the government. And you remember what happened. He was a so-called right-wing ideological targeting of people, and it was 25 years ago at Ruby Ridge. He and his family lived in an isolated cabin in the mountains of northern Idaho. He was a white separatist. He believed that the races should live apart. He had no record of violence against anyone, any other race, any other person, but he was targeted by federal undercover agents who entrapped him by selling him a sawed-off shotgun that was an inch lower than the minimum. They sought to pressure Weaver who often indulged in anti-government bluster, to become an informant against the Aryan nation, but he refused. And then they gave him the wrong court date, right? They sent him the wrong court date. He failed to show up. So the feds used any and all means to take him down. Idaho lawyer David Nevin noted that the U.S. Marshals called in military aerial reconnaissance and had photos studied by the Defense Mapping Agency. They prowled the woods around Weaver's cabin with night vision equipment. They had psychological profiles performed and installed a $130,000 worth of long-range solar-powered spy cameras. They intercepted this mail. They even knew the menstrual cycle of Weaver's teenage daughter and planned an arrest scenario around it. Well, this is David Tulis, and do you want the government sniffing your underwear? Well, if you do, then make sure that you demand the government to control people with the wrong ideas and oppose as hard as you can free speech.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.